Okay, so before we kind of hear from Laurie a bit more about the work that Trident has done, does anyone want to share one of their goals? I've seen you writing them down, so I know you have goals. Does anyone want to share one of them?
Hi, everyone. We're from Union County College. And one of the things that we worked on in October, we did that process map. Was it like a process map? And we looked at our communication that we do with our students. And we send way too many emails to our students. So just a broad goal was to develop an integrated communication plan for students. It's very broad. But I think that's something we want to work on. And then another goal we came up with is and I don't know if this is commented for everybody else, but our students, we have an issue with connecting our students to their payment process, their financial aid process, any of those different things. So we just said, develop a solution to connect payment, fees, and registration for students. So that was a broad-based goal.
Thank you. Is anyone else working on student communication? Laurie is, there you go.
I am. We are still.
Oh, Camden County as well. Great. Yeah, that is a lesson that many of our colleges are learning. Even IPAS right now, they're learning that is a priority. And sending like 20 different emails in 1 week from different departments is probably not the best way to get students to do the one thing that is essential that week. We all get too many emails, so we know how that goes. Anyone else want to share a goal?
Thank you. So I know it's nationwide we have problem with lower enrollment, right? So our like priority goals is supposed to be like increasing enrollment. So it's not only being approachable, but also like or visible. We have to be approachable as well, and like we want to increase retention as well. Like, we probably have the student the first time, like first semester, but they may be not coming back. So these are very important that we have to be approachable. And I believe it starts not only from the first step, it starts with the, with the recruiter, then, actually, we as a faculty now, going out to the community and try to be a recruiter. And that's what I did last couple weeks. We went to one of the high school, we started going to high school in our, local high school, and then during their career day. And we do that, we present our own, program, by programming, in the science. So we did that for the STEM, and biology, chemistry, math, and we told the students about what's going on, with their career, with the perspective, position that they can have and what we offer. I believe this is going to be the first step that everybody in community college should have. That's our approach for one. You want me to go to two? Reduce the divisional separation. Within the, the college, I think we always have, this is our first obstacle. I receive the students after, I believe even the second or actually the third step. So we start from, when we receive the new students, we start with the recruiter, then advisor, and then counselor, and then they come to us. I believe we should have a unified department, and it's one step, and everybody, we try to call it, it's increasing holistic, cohesiveness, and I believe this is going to be the way to solve this problem. And if we are not the only, probably I'm sure you can share with me this particular obstacle that it exists in our own, community college. Thank you.
Thank you. There are so many different ways you can do that as well, with figuring out structures and processes that are set in place that encourage that collaboration. So we have IPAS colleges across the country doing it in very different ways, and some set up formal structures, committees, kind of care teams that really work with students as a group. So there's plenty of examples out there. So I'm not going to pounce on anyone else. I'm going to pass over to Laurie, who's going to talk a little bit about some of her goals with Trident and some of the work that they've been doing, particularly in the process change pieces.
So I was stuck in the airport for a while yesterday, so I decided to go. I wanted to do some of the work that you guys were going to do today. So I refreshed and sort of reset a little bit, thought about what we've accomplished and then some of the things really still that we had to accomplish. So I came up with some goals as well. So we have software that we are implementing right now. So one of my goals is to complete software implementation and then have a full training plan for faculty and staff. So that is one of our big goals, and there are a lot of pieces involved in that goal. You might not have a software platform. Maybe one of your goals is to select a software platform, or to make best use of your software platforms that you currently have available to you, like using the Blackboard shells, which I think is a great idea. Career program choice, academic planning, and financial literacy for all students is another one of our goals. Again, that's huge, right? So I'm not going to get that done tomorrow. It's probably going to take us a couple years to get that done. We're working towards the career and academic plan piece right now. The financial piece we are just starting with. We have some lawyers that are, they're part of a nonprofit, and they are partnering with our school to help us with some financial literacy for our students, some seminars to help them come up with financial plans, which is really critical because some of our students do need that. And then just to make sure that all of our student services are represented in our, we call it our hub, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So we have sort of wraparound services, this holistic approach to the students to meet them where they are when they get to us, which is important. And we have not been doing a good job previously, I guess pre-IPASS. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that we have changed that has caused behavioral change at our school. But I thought before I did that, because we were talking about visioning before, I would share our vision with you. For me, I'm a science teacher. I'm a microbiology. I have a master's degree in microbiology. This kind of work, this visioning, craftsmanship is painful for me. I'm not going to get up here and lie and tell you this was piece of cake and a walk in the park. It's painful because I always struggle with what's the right word. You don't want to pick the wrong word and then end up going in the wrong direction. So we did this together as a team, and really we based this on what we wanted for our students. So the first thing we did was we stripped away all the fancy words, and we just looked at, the first part of the exercise that you just did. What do you want for your students? If you walked with them, how does their experience look, and how do you want it to look? Is it disjointed? Do they get bad information? If that's the case, how do you want it to look for them? How will you support them as they sort of walk this journey? So anyways, this is our vision. Our leadership team came up with this. We want to transform the student experience to include effective onboarding, career and academic advising, and it contributes to them achieving their goals. And so you notice it doesn't say to graduation, because a lot of our students don't graduate because they have other goals. Graduation is not necessarily a goal, and we are very aware of that, right? Even though I know we get judged on graduation, I get that. I'm also a faculty member in our transfer program. Some students come to us for a year and they leave, and that was their goal. So we helped them meet their goal. We were successful. So our visioning was not just our goal of graduation. It's the goal to meet the students where they want to be, where they want to go. And I think that's part of that holistic piece. So that's our vision. I just thought that I would share that and share with you that I sort of feel for you. If this is a painful process, I feel for you, because I think if you strip it down and take away the fancy words and just try to think of what you want for your students, it becomes a lot easier. And I'm also a Post-it person, so I would fill a table with what I want, smooth transitions, academic planning, and just lay them all out and then put the vision together. Really just put together what you want for your students. Okay, so I thought what I would do as I was sort of putting this together to talk about some of the big process changes that we've had over the last couple years at Trident Tech. And I will share with you what each of these are and what it means for our students. And I'll talk a little bit about the behaviors that had to change for this to happen. I probably should have put a slide in here about Trident Tech. We are a 2-year community college technical school. Charleston, South Carolina, our enrollment's just a little over 13,000. Our advising system pre-IPASS was completely decentralized, all faculty advisors. No professional advisors, everything was decentralized. So faculty did all, so students came in, they went to orientation, and then they were immediately assigned a faculty advisor. And so that faculty advisor took care of everything. So what we have gone to now is a more shared approach to advising. We have some new positions, we have some new processes, we have some new physical spaces on campus that have been repurposed to try to create what I call a shared experience or a shared model of advising, where students go to a central one stop we call the student hub, and that's where they go and spend a sort of a predetermined amount of time with one of our generalists that we call a navigator. And then they spend time with the navigator until they are ready to be transitioned over to their academic advisor, and that academic program determines when that happens. So it's really important for us, because we had faculty advisors, to allow the faculty to tell the hub what was best for their students. Let me tell you one thing that never works well with faculty, coming from a faculty member, to walk in and say, this is how you're going to do things now, when they've been doing it for the last 20 years a particular way. Do not do that, okay, because it will not end well in any way, shape, or form. So we went to them and we said, we need your help. We don't know the best way to do it. You tell us the best way to handle your students so the transition is simple. And I'll talk a little bit about how that process goes. So that's how we handle advising now. We did not go all at once, all programs, flip the switch. We were a IPASS 2 school, and we were a STEM school. So we started with our STEM programs, and we've been slowly adding programs to the hub. We should be fully integrated about this time next year. So all new students will filter through the student hub starting about this time next year, I think. That's our plan. Plans change, but that's our plan. So some of the things that we've done, we've created this student hub. It's actually our orientation center that we've repurposed. So we didn't have to build a new building. We already had it. We have new positions that we call navigators. Their position description is new, but they actually are our orientation staff. We no longer have orientation staff. We have repurposed their role to navigators, which they have different duties and roles and responsibilities. So there was some reworking of job descriptions there. Let me also tell you, we are not a union school. South Carolina is a right-to-work state. So once I say we had some roles to rewrite, that's usually the next question that happens that I get is, are you a unionized state? We are not. We also have students, when they begin, complete an interest inventory, which is really our sort of very first step into career planning, which they never did before, nothing like that. They don't go through orientation anymore. They all have an academic plan if they are part of our pilot group. And then we transition them to a faculty member based on their program. So we have I call it sounds a little technical, it's called a transition protocol. I promise it doesn't hurt them. It's a nice, smooth transition. Maybe that's not the best choice of words. So let me tell you a little bit about the Student Hub. And if you have any questions at any time, just raise your hand and ask me. Yes, okay, go. We do. We encourage them to do that they do it with their navigator at first, and then when we transition them over to their academic advisor, they can make changes at any time. If they fail a class, if they change their major. So, yes. I saw another question. Trident Technical College? I will. Yes. You're welcome. Okay. So let me tell you about the Student Hub. Some of the feedback, we administer Noel Levitt's Student Satisfaction Inventory, which is sort of similar to if your school uses SESI. So it allows our students to tell us, first of all, they are able to rank items on importance, and then they tell us how satisfied they are with it. So, and we administer Noel Levitt's every 2 years, and what we were told for 2 rounds of administering Noel Levitt's was that that advising was extremely important to them, but they were very unhappy with it. So I guess after they told us twice, we said maybe we should do something about this. And so we decided, and thankfully that coincided with becoming an IPASS 2 school, and we were able to invest some resources and some time into it. What we were hearing from the students is that they felt like they got the runaround. So they would go to this office, and then that office would maybe help them, or maybe not, and then send them somewhere else. And they felt like they were just ping-ponging back and forth between offices, and they would leave frustrated, and they just did not have a good experience. Question? We have 12 right now. They are all staff, full-time staff. So these are our professional generalists. I don't know what you call them in your school, sort of first-year specialists. Their caseload? So each navigator is specialized to a particular program. Sometimes if it's a small program, they may have more than one program. And their caseload will range, but I think the highest we have right now is 300 per navigator. And one of the things that we talk about, we're watching this very closely because we've really only been live a little more than a year in the hub right now. So one of the things that we're watching is how, if you have a caseload of 300, how much work does that translate to, right? So if you spend a lot of time with them up front in that first meeting, get them planned out, sort of get them using the tool so they're feeling a little bit self-sufficient, how often do you see them, and does that help you alleviate the work burden? And then eventually they're going to transition off to an academic advisor. So right now we're trying to work through and see what that really translates to. Because if it's 300 now, a year from now it may not be 300 as you transition some off, and then unfortunately with enrollment declining we're not getting as many new students. But I will get there. Yep, that's a great question. So our navigators live in the hub. I joke that they live there and they say, yeah, we feel like we live here. But yeah, so they are located in the hub. They are our first touch, high touch person. So I mentioned earlier to another table I was talking to, if you're a Grey's Anatomy fan, you're my person. So the navigator is that person for that student. From the minute they apply, they are assigned a navigator. Not accepted. From the minute they apply, they get notification right away through email and through a physical letter, those still are delivered, that they have a navigator. Okay, and they have contact information. They have the link to the platform so they can log in and get started. So that's their navigator, and we encourage them to come in. We have Navigate to Success sessions where they can learn about the hub. We encourage them to come in. We have things like, pens and T-shirts. I've got some grand ideas that I got from Dream about using T-shirts, so I'm very excited about that. So the navigator is the consistent point of contact for the students. If they ever have a question, and we tell them this, I don't care how long they're there. If they've already been transitioned over an academic advisor, but they have a financial aid question, all of a sudden something to do with their scholarship, they can always go back to the hub and talk to their navigator. So they always have somebody, okay? And to students, that makes a big deal. That's a big deal. So we actually, in the system, we take away their navigator because we're a colleague school, and it's just, yeah, it's old colleagues. So, so just for ease of administration, we do remove them from the student record, or we close them out. We don't remove them from the student record. But they can always go back and see there's always walk-in hours. They can go and see a navigator at any time during the day. So, and even into the evenings, we do keep some evening hours there as well for our evening students. And then our navigators are all cross-trained. So a lot of them came from different areas of the college. I feel a little bad because we did lift, financial aid officer, we have an admissions counselor. So they really do understand the workings of the college from all different places in the process. So they are cross-trained. And when we get new navigators that come in, if they come in from the outside, we do require them to rotate through admissions, financial aid. They have to go through all of the areas, spend some time, and see how that process works. So that way they can answer those questions. And they do spend time in academics embedded in the program that they are going to be the navigator for as well. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So when we decided that students were going to start with a navigator, that was brand new for us because students got to Trident, they finished orientation, whether it was in person or online, and then hopefully they did orientation. It was not mandatory. And then they were assigned an academic advisor, which was a faculty member. And a lot of times they had a really hard time finding that faculty member because one thing I also didn't tell you is we work on 7-week sessions. So we're on a compressed format. We are in class all the time. And in science classes, you're in 3 hours of lecture, 3 hours of lab in 7 weeks twice. So we're in 6 hours of lecture and 6 hours of lab for just one class. So now we're even in our classroom or in our offices even less. So it was becoming a source of frustration for students. So I've mentioned earlier we were decentralized. Our faculty were not always available, not because they didn't want to be, which I think was the perception, not because they didn't want to be, but just because they were in the classroom. So our shared model involves the navigator first and then a handoff or a transition to a faculty in their unique program. So the navigator is an onboarding specialist and an early academic advisor. For some programs, they don't do much advising at all. For some, they do a lot more. Okay, and I'll talk about what that looks like in a little bit. So our navigators can help students with all aspects of onboarding. So admissions paperwork. So before they're accepted, they still have admissions. You have to approve residency and all those kinds of things. And if you're a first gen and you don't have anybody at home that can help you, I was a first generation student. I went to a 4-year school, not a 2-year school, but I remember how my parents struggled because neither one of them went to school with what all of these requirements were, and forget the FAFSA. I mean, I have a PhD and I have 2 kids in college and I can barely figure out the FAFSA sometimes. So, there are lots of things that these students, especially if they're first generation and they don't have a lot of support at home, that our navigators can help them with. So get them started with FAFSA. If not, refer them over to TRIO or to our EOC program that can walk them through the FAFSA. We use Navigate, EAB Navigate. That gets students started with an early sort of career assessment. They can help them get started with that, get them some academic planning, and then start them with course selection. So all of this can happen in the hub. So by the time they reach their academic advisor, all of this is done. So, and in the past, one of the big complaints that we've heard from faculty advisors is that the students get to me and I can't do any academic advising because they don't understand they don't even understand what it means to be a full-time student. They don't understand their scholarship requirements. I'm explaining what a life scholarship is. I'm explaining what a full-time student is. I'm explaining vocabulary. And so then I have 10 minutes to talk about the Associate in Science program or the culinary program or the nursing program because I spent so much time doing these transactional, can you pick my 5 classes for me, that there was no time to actually have a meaningful program-specific conversation with them. So what we were hoping to do with this redesign was lift a lot of that away from the faculty to our navigators who are our generalists who really understand that better. And the best part about our navigators, because a lot of them have already worked at the school, they have contacts that answer the phone when they call. So they can call somebody and say, hey, I got a quick question about this. Can you help me out? And they've got an answer like that. Whereas if a student calls, they might get the front desk line, or sometimes they don't even pick up the phone when faculty call because they're busy. Again, not because they don't, I think, because they don't want to talk to us, but because they're super busy, right? They're swamped in their areas as well. So those are that's sort of in a nutshell what our navigators do for our students. And they are that first touch, high touch. They really connect. They feel, those are my students. They own that relationship with those students. So so far it's worked out very nicely. So I said we are an EAB Navigate school. So part of that platform is students take a very quick, what I call interest inventory. So just a really quick story. I had a student years ago come in my office and tell me that she wanted to be she wanted to deliver babies. She wanted to be an OB. And I said, okay, great. You're going to go to medical school, so let's get you signed up for some math and science classes. And she looked at me and she said, oh, no, I hate math and science. I don't want to take any of those classes. And I said, okay, so maybe we need to revisit the career plan, talk a little bit about what's required. So I feel like this interest inventory, it's very fast, nothing that takes students a long time. They don't have to exit out and save it. It asks them their goals, to prioritize their goals. There's just 3. Match my interests, high job demand, high pay, and they just rank them. And then it asks them 3 strengths, so what they feel their strengths are, and then 3 interests, working with people, helping people, working with my hands, working at a computer, things like that. They can select, so they prioritize their goals, 3 strengths, 3 interests. And then Navigate will take that information and it will relate those interests to what they call a meta major. I don't like that word because I feel like it's a word that if you're a pathways school, meta majors means something a little different. But generally it relates it to a big umbrella of programs that they might be interested in. And then we map that to our specific programs that are available to them at Trident Tech. So one of the things that this allows is if a student comes in, and our students, I don't know if it happens here too, but our students have to, when they fill out the application, they have to pick a program. And they do that for financial aid reasons because they can't be undecided. Same? Okay. So, sometimes they pick randomly, somebody that they love and respect has a job that they think would be good for them, but really it's not a good match for them. So when they come in and they sit with their navigator and we see that their goals and interests and strengths point to something that's completely unrelated to what they've selected for a career or a program, then we can start those conversations about, are you sure that's really the program that you want to pursue? Why have you selected that? And we can sort of get into the weeds a little bit with them about, and if they're really confused, then we can refer them. We have a much more rigorous career inventory through our counseling, and we can provide that. One of the things that we are looking at is to bring those services into the hub so the student doesn't have to be referred out to counseling. So we can do it both ways, either have counseling come in and do it with the students that are undecided or refer them out to counseling. So that interest inventory, and it probably, all of these things sound like really great ideas that it makes perfect sense, right? Of course you would want to do this for students up front, but we weren't doing this up front. Students would pick their program at application, and then sometimes they change their major a year in, and now they've got 90 hours and no degree. So that's not a good way for them to start and proceed through the process. So we feel like this, while it might not be that big of a deal, we feel like to select the right program early, that best fit early on, even if they wiggle around a little bit, it's not going to be massive changes that'll cause them to rack up a bunch of excessive credits. So no orientation. Somebody asked me about that. So orientation, I've seen students come out of orientation before, and it is a horrible shell-shocked look on their face when they come out of orientation. We call it drinking from a fire hose because you learn everything you need to know about the college from the first day to the last day in an hour and a half. So, students hear the first 2 or 3 things that you say, and then they figure the rest of it doesn't apply to them yet because they're so new, and then it's never reinforced again. Where do they hear it? Well, they usually hear it when they go off path, when they make a mistake, when they go astray somehow, and it costs them time or money or effort or all three. So we decided Navigate, our product, allows us to create events, and we are able to tie them, and it's called MyPath. And in the platform, students, as soon as they log in, it's right there along the left side, all the things, it's like a to-do list. But it's not everything all at once. It's timed to specific points in the semester. So when they first log in, they'll have 3 or 4 things that they see. Complete your financial aid, meet with your navigator. I can't remember what the other ones are. But it's just a few things that they have to do that first time they log in the first week. So get these things done, and then new things will populate as the semester goes on. As we get closer to registration, register for classes will pop up. Register for spring 2, register for summer classes. So it's not all at once. It sort of rolls out those events in a way, and it's sort of just in time as they need them, not all at once where they can't possibly process everything all at once. Yeah. So one of the things that we are working with is changing the culture of the college. It was interesting. I have one son that's a junior at Clemson University, and another who's about to start. And I remember going to orientation with my oldest. And it was a day and a half, and he started orientation. And when he came out, he had registered for his own classes all by himself. And he checked they have a Tiger Paw or whatever it's called, iRoar account. He checked that every day all summer long. I'm like, what did they do to you that you are now coming home? And he said, well, I don't want to miss anything. They told me it was going to be important. So for new students, what we feel is easier to create the culture. So when they come in, that's what they get messages about Navigate from all different directions. Email, physical mail, their navigator, Navigate to Success sessions. We're just about to introduce a freshman 101 course. It will be embedded in there. So it's becoming part of our culture. So that's really how we are encouraging them to get in there and just keep checking regularly. We do email them too, way too much. That's why we're working on communication. So that's how we've sort of gone away. Now, if students are not in the pilot, we do still run them through orientation until we include their program in the hub. So we do have some students still going through traditional orientation. But this My Plan, these events are delivered to students when they need it. And then all students have an academic planning piece. They are encouraged to create an academic plan from start to finish. And then that is passed by an academic advisor, and they can approve it. And as changes are made, our navigators work very closely with our faculty members to make sure that everybody is doing right by the student. So again, we had academic plans before. It was a piece of paper that the student would come in, and we would say, this is what you need to take, and we would map a few things out, and then we'd give it to the student and say, now make sure you bring this back next time, and you'd never see that piece of paper again, right? Never, ever see it again. So again, academic planning isn't new for us, but we are able to now keep it centralized in the platform. The student can see it at any time. Their navigator can see it at any time. Their faculty advisor can see it at any time. Anybody who's working in any office, any student support office on staff can see the academic plan. If financial aid officer needs to see it to make sure they're taking a course that's part of their program so it's covered by financial aid, they can look at their plan and see it. No piece of paper is any longer required for a student to know what their academic plan is. So again, academic planning was not new to us. We were doing it, but now we're doing it in a way that students have access to their own information, and so do folks on campus that want to help that student. They have access to that all the time. A couple behavioral changes that this has caused. It's really caused us to look carefully at how we sequence our classes, because when Navigate shows the academic courses for the student, it puts them in order of which they should be taken. So the students just have to drag and drop the courses from the top of the list into the semesters that they want to take them, or the terms they want to take them. But that sequence was not a given. There was a lot of back and forth with academic divisions as to, does this sequence look right? Is this what you want for your students? And we got into some really meaningful conversations about, well, I know that's always been in the catalog like that, but I really didn't think anybody looked at the catalog. So but now that students are going to be using it as drag and drop, I probably need to make sure that it's really what's in the best interest of the student. So it's caused us to look carefully how we sequence courses, and then also how we plan. We are just this summer, I'll let you know how it goes, we are going to a 12-month schedule. So students can plan for 3 semesters out, so that way they know, because research tells us students that plan better stay. They know what's coming, and they know they can see where they're going, so they stay longer. So we're going to a 12-month schedule, and we've had to be much more intentional about our course offerings. It's not just random. It's been much more intentional. So we've always had the online. So we've always able to schedule through colleagues. So students have always been able to register and schedule. They have something that we call TTC Express, which is their student portal. It's a little clunky, and our colleague portal for our faculty is also, if you're a colleague school, you know what I mean, right? So lots of screens, stuff hidden, places you can't find it. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. Right. So we don't use a book anymore either, because our book was wrong the minute it hit. The minute it was printed, it was wrong. So, yeah. Right. It is cheaper. Easier to correct if there's a mistake. Yeah. Yep. So that is so that's allowed us to be a little bit more intentional about how we select courses and when we offer them. And we can now offer them when students need them more, which is important. Before it was like throwing spaghetti on the wall. You just see what would stick and then offer those courses. So these transition protocols that allow us to seamlessly transition our students from the hub to their faculty advisor. I put customized in quotes. So we do have sort of, I said that we went to the faculty and asked them what's the best way to treat and transition your students. And then we listened a lot. I listened to every division on campus, multiple programs. I did a lot of listening to try to figure out what the common themes were, all right? And so what we've done is we've sort of created a set menu of options available for these transition protocols. So we have some smaller programs that really are high touch with their students, and they want their students as soon as they're onboarded. They want them to be ready to be enrolled. They don't care if they're in any kind of developmental ed, so they said just hand them over to us. Sometimes they might have blocked schedules. They might have, we have an aeronautical studies, they have clock time for FAA that they need to keep track of. Some programs have wait lists that they want to manage themselves. So they just want the students to be ready to be enrolled, and then we hand them over. Super easy. We take care of it that way. We have some programs that they want them to be through developmental education, so then they're ready for more program level courses. We hand them over after that. We have some, so our health science and nursing, they want them to be in the program before we hand them over. So the volume there, folks, is significant. So pre-nursing, pre-health science, we run all of those students through the hub until they're ready to be admitted to the program. Well, they have, so in South Carolina, we can't have any pre So they fall under the Associate in Science umbrella, and we have NUP, which is Nursing Prep, and we have HSP, which is Health Science Prep. Yeah, so we used to have pre, but then we can't do that anymore. Correct. To get into the program, they have prerequisites but not exams. There's a secondary application process. So they can apply, and it's different for nursing. Nursing, they have to complete all the prereqs and then they can apply. With health sciences, they actually want them to apply as soon as they begin their prereqs, because if a spot opens up, they're a little bit more fluid. They will take them if they maybe are missing one or a prereq or so, just to make sure that they've got full classes. Nursing doesn't seem to have any trouble. So they can be a little, they're kind of mean, the nurses, so. Well, so our faculty have been dealing with those inequities forever, because it's been completely decentralized. So they actually feel better about this system because that whole onboarding piece has been lifted off their shoulders. So they're actually, I feel like we did them all a huge favor by just getting rid of that piece. They feel like they're able to have the more meaningful conversations, which they're completely happy to have with them. So. Yes. So the Associate in Science program, they complete 30 hours with their navigator. So pretty much their first year is in the hub. And our students, besides probably the pre-nursing and pre-health, because sometimes they can spend a lot of time in their pre-pattern, they spend the most time at the hub. So they do, and what we do when we get ready to include a program in the hub, we prepare materials for the navigator that says, when a student comes in, this is the preferred schedule that we would give them for the first year, depending on, and if they're math developmental, it might look a little different. If they're English developmental, it might look a little different. But we create resources. The faculty and the navigator work together to create resources so the student is getting a little taste of what the program's like, so they're not completely in developmental and not feeling like they belong to that program. So we try to balance that, and then we provide the navigator with a clear set of guidelines as to how the student, the classes that are important. And for transfer, actually transfer is kind of a beast because South Carolina, we don't have any statewide articulation agreements. So it's like the Wild West of transfer. So it can be school and then by program in the school what classes transfer and how they transfer. So we do have some resources even in transfer that say, okay, if the student's going to go to College of Charleston, make sure they take these math classes, these history classes, and a whole lot of foreign language because they need that, whereas they wouldn't need it to go to University of South Carolina or Clemson University. So, and then the engineering, pre-engineering, they have to be through college algebra. And then once they're through college algebra, they can start being more active in those engineering courses, and we transition them right then. Sure, go ahead. They do. Sure. Sure. So for the transfer programs, they make sure that the last year is tweaked just right for transfer. So it's a seamless transfer. And they actually help the navigators with that as well when they create the sort of upfront resources and plans. The programs where they are transitioned more quickly, they work in a much more cohorted, I think of our engineering technologies, mechanical engineering, civil engineering technologies, our welding programs, automotive, culinary. They work with them they really cohort those students. They also are much more, especially our 2-year programs where they go directly to work, they are much more involved. They have advisory boards. They're much more involved in the community and in industry, so they can help place the students. Sometimes we have trouble keeping students because they leave before they're done, especially culinary. We lose a ton of them in the summer because they go to work. Charleston's a high tourist city. They work all summer, they make great money, and then they don't come back. They're like, oh, well, this is good. The money's great. And then they don't come back to finish their program. So the faculty sort of help mitigate all of those real program-specific type things with the students. Mhm. Right now, it's pretty heavy with planning. We do have, and we have not fully explored, we have a great reporting and it's called campaign feature in Navigate, and it's not something that we fully explored yet, so we're sort of working on that. But we can, students that haven't registered yet, we can send a campaign out and say, hey, we've noticed that you were registered for term 1, not for term 2. What can we do to get you back in? I've got some times available. Why don't you click on this link, schedule on my calendar? And so we can do that. And we are not required, faculty are not required to report midterm grades. So as far as if a student is failing, that's going to rely on an early alert, which that feature we are also just starting with right now. Really the software implementation and the planning and the whole navigator to faculty has taken up a good portion of our last almost 3 years. So we're working on early alert right now, which is a whole different set of processes. So one of the real benefits of working so closely with this collaborative relationship with faculty is that it really has helped with faculty buy-in. Faculty see the navigator as a partner. We encourage them to give them feedback if they see something maybe that wasn't done correctly. Maybe it's a training issue we need to work on in the hub. And we encourage our navigators, if they ever have a question, to reach out to the departments, because they really do appreciate that when they feel like they're still being included, because everybody has ownership over the students, and faculty actually have been a little hesitant to give them up. I don't know what they think we're going to do with them, but I've been a little hesitant to give them up because they're their students, and they feel great connection and ownership to them. So I guess, that's just community college, right? I mean, we don't have a lot of our mission is to teach, and we all got into education to make students' lives better. So, and that's it. That was my part. How'd I do? I did well. Okay, good. Okay, good. More questions?
Time.
Yes. Correct.
Are you tracking any kind of data about how many students rely on an email or telephone conversation as opposed to coming in person to visit?
That's a great question. So not yet. So we are working on communication right now. One of the very last things I want to do before I wrap up the grant is I want to bring a consultant in and talk to us about messaging and the best way to get information out to students. So it seems to be we track utilization of the tool, and we see bumps whenever we re-message to them. So whether it's a postcard that comes in the mail, whether it's a letter, a phone call, like if there's a campaign of phone calls, we will see the utilization bump. So we can almost pinpoint where those interventions occur. So I guess we are a little bit tracking it, but we need to probably be a little bit more intentional about it. Actually, when I was at Dream this past, was it a week ago, 2 weeks ago? Somebody actually from a much smaller school shared something really interesting about communication. They actually looked at the utilization of email by students, like how many students open their email, because the thinking is students don't use their email. And what they found was that students were actually using their email. It was like 80 or 90% of students at that school were using their email. So maybe it's not the method, maybe it's the message. So are you providing messaging in a way that they want to open that email? You know, if it's some generic financial aid at ttc.edu, they're probably going to look at that and go, yeah, I don't really want to read that, you know. Or are you providing so much messaging, and this is what happens at Trident, that you have hot dog sale in the breezeway to celebrate to fundraise for respiratory, international experience meeting, and then buried in 20 emails is you're about to be purged from all your classes because you haven't completed verification for financial aid. And they see 20 emails and they're like, I'm not going to read those. So they miss the one that they really need to be reading, right? So do you turn it purple? What do you do to make sure that they're reading? So I think sometimes it's not as much the method, and this is something that I'm really interested. I'm hounding our IR department to have them get me some numbers of students that are actually opening their email, because I want to know, are they logging into their email? If they are, then we've got them. We just need to message them in a way that they're going to read it. So I don't know that yet. Maybe I'll come back and tell you that in a year from now. So, question. Go ahead.
Of the faculty member, thank you. How did you get them to cooperate? So did you invite the navigators to sit with full-time faculty members periodically? How often? How did you do it?
That's a great question. So we have a set procedure for when we bring a new program into the hub. So the first thing we do is we give a faculty member, we let the department head or the dean select a faculty member to help us. Who's going to be your person to help us write these protocols and these resources? We give that faculty member release time. So they have some time to work with us. We bring them in. We talk to them about what we need from them. We encourage them to go back and talk to their colleagues, and they create the resources on their own. So it comes organically from them. Then when they think they've got things ready, they bring it back to us. I actually just had one of these meetings yesterday morning with culinary. They brought us back the resources. We took a look at them. We looked at their transition protocol. It was very reasonable. We try not to have, we have 150 programs. We try not to have 150 transition protocols. The navigators could never keep up, and they'd probably kill me if we had that happen. So we try to make sure it's a reasonable transition protocol. And then what we do is we invite that faculty member to come talk to the navigators. He's going to train the navigators on the protocols that he just put together, fresh with the feedback from his department or her department, a division in mind, talks to the navigators. So we have weekly meetings with navigators, and this is where a lot of our cross-training happens. So we invite the faculty member to talk to the navigators, and then the next thing we do is we invite the entire department to the hub so they can see the software piece, meet their navigator for their program, ask any questions that they want to ask. We give them a tour. And so by the end, I know it sounds unrealistic, but everybody is really pretty happy. The biggest problem that we have right now is small programs are very protective. They want to make sure students are being sent to their programs. Do not send my students somewhere else to another program. I need them in my program. So we get a little bit of pushback there. I always try to circle it back to what's absolutely best for the student. I had someone in law-related studies a couple days ago say, anybody that walks in here and says anything about law school, anything needs to come directly to me. Well, it's a 2-year terminal degree, and it does not lead to law school. So him and we had a little back and forth about what's really in the best interest of the student. Do they need to be a paralegal? So those conversations are happening. But I find if you put the student at the center, it becomes a lot less combative. It's really what's best for the student, not me picking on your program. I think your program's great, but is it really in the best interest of the student? Are we doing right by the student? So nobody has, it's never come to blows yet, so we're in good shape.
How many academic programs do you have? How many students on campus and how many full-time faculty?
Yeah, I don't know. So our head count is, we have 3 campuses and a few sites, but main campus is by far our biggest. We have about 10,000 students on main campus. We do have navigators, at least a part-time presence on the other campuses as well. One thing that we didn't do with the other campuses is because each of our campuses sort of has their own flavor. The rural communities have a much more hands-on approach. So we did not go there and say, now you have to do it this way. The only thing we asked them to do was to use the software. So that way we could all be programming and reporting similarly. But we did not, we told them, if your Student Success Center on your campus works well, you don't have to become a hub. You don't have to make it a hub. Full-time faculty members, oh gosh, I should know that. I think it's 110, 150 full-time faculty members. Maybe it's more, I don't know. Sorry, I should know these things. I need my IR guy with me. Well, between certificates, diplomas, and associate's degrees, we have over 150. It's too many. As we start pathways work, right, that's way too many. We're not a union. No union. I know, that makes it different, doesn't it? So, go ahead.
Advising report. So at Trident, does academic advising report into academic affairs or student affairs? Has that changed? I'm just curious about the reporting structure.
That's a great question as well. So that was one of the first questions we got asked when we started going to our IPASS convenings. Who owns advising? And I remember as the project lead, they looked at me and said, who owns advising? I'm like, I don't really know. Who does own advising? So I looked at, we had our sponsors, our Vice President of Student Services. I said, do you guys own academics? And she said, no, I think academics are advising. She said, no, I think academics owns advising. So then I got back to campus and I asked the Vice President of Academic Affairs, do you own advising? And she said, well, I guess it's probably in my job description somewhere. I said, but who answers for it? And she said, nobody. So we did not have, I know I really should not be sharing these things out loud, but we didn't have anybody that was really day-to-day responsible. So the person, and so one of the things that I did was I said, it needs to be me. I don't know why I did that, but I said it needs to be me. So, and because working on this grant, I had a very, a good look at what the student services side looked like, which I had never had before this grant, and I knew the academic side very well. And I think whoever your director of academic advising is should have a foot in both worlds, because both sides of the house influence a student's experience on your campus. So that's my plug for working together with student services, which are often, academics and student services are often very siloed, right? We call them towers of excellence, right? But they are separate, and usually there's very little crossing. But there needs to be a lot of crosstalk between those two areas, because financial aid will influence whether a student ends up in your seat, in your class. And nobody on campus sees your students more than your faculty members. Nobody. They don't spend time with anybody on campus more than they spend with your faculty members. So they are telling your faculty members things about their experience in class that is valuable information for you to have as you redesign your advising. So do not leave faculty out. I know that faculty can be cranky, but do not leave them out of this process. You need the information that they have.